CTBK gives executives and owners of mid-market businesses unparalleled confidence and clarity so you can focus on strategic objectives and organizational success. Their multidisciplinary advisors, accountants, and team members have a wealth of experience and are all available and responsive to each client to ensure the most effective advice, actions, and outcomes no matter the situation or complexity level. That experience base and one-team approach, combined with integrated and efficient way of operating, enable them to be truly proactive partners, doing the best thing for their client every time. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK can work for you.
Hey, it's your boy Pharrell. I'm a huge fan of Tim Graham and Friends. Then again, who isn't? Shake it, ooh.
Who's in the NFL here? You? You? How about you, Tim? You, Tim.
It's Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and business consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Sports Plus. Coming to you, I am from my undisclosed location still. At some point, I will be allowed out of my bunker and no longer be a hostage to my confines. Or maybe I'll just decorate this place. That's probably what's going to happen. Jonah Bronstein coming to us from the KeyBank Center press box, where he has just witnessed the Buffalo Sabres lose kind of a borderline, at least organizationally, historic shutout loss, 42 shots, in which they lose the game and hold a plus 18 margin in terms of shots. I think it was 87 shots attempted, if you want to factor in the blocks and the misses.
Sounds about right. The scoring chances were 28-10.
Oh.
Almost a 3-1 advantage in, shots near the net that should have been prime chances.
Well, let's set up this week for Buffalo sports. It's been pretty ugly. The Sabres, they do well. They win 4 out of 5, and in that 5-game stretch, average 5 goals for. They scored 25 games over a 5-game stretch, go 4-1, and then they've since lost back-to-back games by a combined score of 9-2 at Pittsburgh, and then, of course, the 42-shot shutout today against New Jersey. UB football lost to Ohio today out in Amherst, and that is UB's home finale. They are now 5-7, 4-3 in the conference, which is 6th place after losing their 3rd straight game. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the Bills. They go to Pittsburgh in a really fascinating circumstance. The Bills started off the season 4-0. They're 3-4 since September. 3 wins is all they've had in October and November. And they're coming off that game in Houston in which Josh Allen was hit 12 times. 8 of those were sacks. And that doesn't include the times he was hit while running, which was him getting hurt. That scary situation, that hit that he took in which Daniil Hunter engulfed him, or was it Will Anderson? I'm sorry, one of the two, because they both had heydays against Josh Allen on Thursday. He was destroyed and left Josh Allen kicking in pain, writhing around on the NRG Stadium turf. You thought, man, this guy might be done for the game, if not longer, but he was able to stay in it. That was a running play. Josh Allen just took a beating. And now it's been ruled official by Coach Sean McDermott that left tackle Deion Dawkins will not play in Pittsburgh. Neither will right tackle Spencer Brown. Deion Dawkins is in concussion protocol. He won't be cleared in time for the game. Spencer Brown's right shoulder that he hurt that made him look, well, man, he was really struggling at the end of the game in Houston. He's still unable to go. So you're looking at Ryan Vandemark on the left side. Probably Alec Anderson, the guard, the backup guard, is going to move out to right tackle based on what we saw at practice today. And if not him, then you're looking at 2 6th-round picks with minimal experience, Tylen Grable and Chase Lunt. So, the Steelers tied for 2nd entering this week in takeaways. The 3rd blitzingest team in the NFL, I believe, or maybe it's 4th Maybe there are 3 teams. Maybe I'm messing that stat up. I think it might be 3 teams blitz more. They get after it. TJ Watt, Nick Herbig, Highsmith coming back from the pectoral injury. Those are 3 guys with a lot of sacks and the ability to chase Josh Allen. That game is wild. So Jonah, I mean, I'm setting it up. And here, who would have ever thought that at Thanksgiving, UB basketball would be the team that everybody could maybe look at and smile. UB got a vote in the AP poll this week. Now, again, maybe that's just somebody looking at records and not too much deeper than that. I don't know that they deserve poll attention, but I don't know where you want to start. You're there at KeyBank Center. You just got done watching that. We are a little removed from that Texans game, but that Steelers game really seems a lot more tense than it would have been even a couple of weeks ago. Certainly not when the schedule was released. And you're looking at, that's probably a Bills win.
It's a very big game for the Bills in terms of the playoff positioning, what it means for them in the standings and the tiebreakers if they happen to lose to the Steelers. And a win would put the Bills in better position, not better position for Chase in New England in the division. There's still some work that needs to be done there, but for the playoffs and the wild card and separating themselves from some of these other teams that are struggling, a win this weekend would mean a lot.
With Baltimore losing on Thanksgiving, the Steelers are very much alive for the AFC North title. So they have a lot to play for. Aaron Rodgers coming back for this game. So the Steelers, I mean, they're not packing it in.
Yeah, always an intriguing matchup between Mike Tomlin and Sean McDermott. Sometimes it's played into the results on the field, sometimes it's not. Also, a bit of a historical rivalry in the conference with the Bills and the Steelers going back to the 70s and previous decades in between. It's not a division game, but there's a local familiarity and crossover with the fan bases, especially people that live up there in Eastern Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania. But for me, I got to get there first. We got today I was over at UB for that game. UB did lose, their season's over, but had they won, would have gained bowl eligibility and maybe had a good chance at being invited to a bowl game, continuing their season, and rallied in that game. Thought maybe they could pull it out, but they didn't. Sabres game tonight. Sabres play a road game again tomorrow. Tomorrow is the Buffalo Bandits home opener, which is a big event, banner raising ceremony for their 3rd straight championship. Another game against the Georgia Swarm, which will be broadcast live on Channel 4. We've had the games on WNLO CW23 for the past couple seasons, but this will be on over the airwaves Channel 4, which maybe in the streaming area doesn't mean as much as it used to, but still kind of a significant event, I think, for Bandits lacrosse and the fan base and the newsworthiness of that team. UB basketball, 7-0. You mentioned got a vote in the Associated Press poll at the very bottom of that. Comes home and plays at Canisius on Saturday night. So getting more and more into the games that matter and some of the more interesting games in the college basketball schedule. High school football, still got 3 teams left playing for a state championship. We're going to be monitoring that tomorrow and into Sunday. And then this Bills game in that 4 o'clock window, that'll be, if you're really a Bills fan and a Bills supporter, you're probably very anxious about this game and what it means and the Bills' injuries and the way they've been playing. But from the entertainment standpoint, I think this is going to be a really fun game to watch. 2 teams that really need this game and, see who steps up and who pulls away and what the AFC playoff picture looks like after that game.
Yeah, the Bills, a lot different team than the last time they won in Pittsburgh. That was the Duck Hodges game, but I remember it as the Renegade game in which Brian Dable and Sean McDermott all week at practice played Renegade to the point, almost like a psyops, like you would you're just trying to inundate these guys with that Renegade song that the Steelers like to play when their defense is on the field to get them juiced up and ready to go. There's a history. It's in the Steelers game notes of what happens right after they play Renegade. It's takeaways, big hits, big losses on 3rd down to force a punt, game-changing type plays. And the Bills that week played Renegade to the point where the players were sick of it and then came to love it. Again, it's almost like a Stockholm syndrome type thing. And the players were talking about that after the game. Brian Dable dials up a bomb that was in the plan the whole time. When these guys play Renegade, we're going to shove it up their ass. And that's the way the Bills used to be. They're not that team anymore. They're not shoving it up anybody's ass. In fact, they are the ones, as we're coming out of that Houston game, I was in the Texans locker room. It's not often I do that, but after that game, I wanted to, based on the annihilation that defense had just handed the Bills offense and Josh Allen in particular, and talking to players about that mentality. And they had talked all week about using these almost National Geographic style metaphors of going on the hunt and tracking down that gazelle and everybody getting in on the kill. And it bore itself out. So it was striking to me that the Bills are the hunted. They're not the hunters anymore. They are the prey. And maybe it's a lackadaisical mentality, or sometimes it happens with really good teams. They've won 5 straight division titles. You start a season or you go through a season and you're of a mentality of, can we just start the playoffs right now? The games don't seem to mean as much, I think, unless you're on it, unless you are mentally on it. And I think, and then what the Bills get is every opponent's best effort. They want they want a piece of Josh Allen. They want to get after this team that is a standard bearer in the NFL. And that the Houston Texans were able to turn the Bills into a piece of meat, which is essentially what they accomplished. I think it's striking when you think back on that game down in Pittsburgh a few years ago with Matt Barkley swinging the parka over his head, and everybody was going crazy on the sidelines while Renegade was playing during that commercial break. And then you come back and Brian Dable just dialed it up and they went down the left sideline. I don't recall if that was Diggs or it might have been John Brown. I don't recall. It was a while ago. But anyway, the Bills hit the big bomb, then score a touchdown, and it was a spirit breaker. And speaking of spirit breakers, I was talking about this on Bob Kaczynski's podcast earlier. That hook and lateral play that the Bills pulled off to convert that long third down, a miraculous play. Those are the types of plays that will break a team's will. The Houston Texans gave up that play and they buckled up and they still stopped the Bills. The Bills they have some plays in them, but they just don't seem to have that killer instinct anymore.
I mean, if it was only,
or I don't want to say they don't have it anymore as a flat statement, but they haven't shown it in a long time. It doesn't seem like.
If they had just lost the game in Houston, even if playing poorly, wouldn't be that much of an issue. Road team on a Thursday night, coming off a win, you could chalk that up. Houston has a very good defense. But the way they lost, the difficulties they had in pass protection, getting both of the starting tackles hurt, Josh Allen hurt maybe more than once in that game. How much residual effect is there? We see that there is residual effect and that these 2 tackles aren't going to play. Even more moving parts for the Bills offense. And Josh Allen taking that many hits. He's got a pad on his elbow this week in practice. It was the shoulder that had him down earlier in the game. Just wondering if he's 100% or if he's even mentally looking for the blitzers and maybe not as sharp.
He's talked all season about at times having happy feet, even in wins.
Yeah, and he's played differently. He is not evading the sacks with his feet the same way as he used to. He's not throwing the ball away as much as he used to. In this area of his game is regressing more to the quarterback he was coming into the league that did take a lot of sacks and was careless with the ball and did get frazzled and wasn't able to play his best football under pressure. And then the last few years, that pressure seemed to only make him better. It was almost a superpower, him scrambling out of the pocket, getting to his right and making those incredible throws down the field. Now he's missing those throws, or the receivers aren't able to quite keep their feet in bounds. They aren't the highlight plays that they used to be. They're plays that is normally the case when you flush a quarterback out of the pocket. Advantages for the defense. And the Bills have a lot of moving parts. Brandon Cook's coming in. Curtis Samuel going on injured reserve. He hasn't been playing much lately, but now, who's actually going to play offense? Do they need
outright
Keon
cutting
Coleman
Elijah
active?
Moore? Cutting a guy with a guaranteed contract. And then that day that they cut him, Wednesday, Joshua Palmer ends up on the injury report. And so, I asked Sean McDermott about it today, and I know that Ian Rappaport had reported that it was a mutual parting of the ways, but how how nasty did it get behind the scenes that they just let Elijah Moore walk? They didn't have to. They could have kept him on the roster. There's room for him. He's guaranteed. They're already paying him. So it smells like a situation where they would rather him not be around.
Right. And he probably wasn't happy with his usage and his role. But between receivers in the doghouse, receivers that are injured, and then Brandon Cooks coming in and only being on the team and just learning the offense, how many receivers do the Bills have that you really can count on getting their best game and their most prepared game this weekend? Dalton Kincaid thrown into that. He's questionable, coming off a hamstring injury. How close to 100% will he be? How much will he be affected now in the last month of the season? Last year he missed games with a knee injury, came back and wasn't very good, playing hurt, and took some soft criticism from the team maybe for his durability and conditioning and ability to be healthy and available in the playoffs. It's a different body part. It's a different situation. And Dalton Kincaid has been very good when he's been on the field this year. But what level of player they're going to get from Dalton Kincaid this week and going forward? Keon Coleman, do they need him with the injuries in the depth chart? It does seem like they probably need him active one of these weeks. And how will he respond? And what will they get out of him?
It
There's a lot
sometimes
going
can
on
be
there.
it sometimes can be a little dangerous to read into what we see as reporters because we don't get to see all of practice. We get to see the very beginning, like stretching and some very, individual drills. And then when we come in at the end of practice, sometimes guys are doing a little extra work. And on Wednesday, we did see Josh Allen working with Keon Coleman. That's not a regular thing. Usually, as soon as practice is over, Josh Allen goes and does his news conference. His weekly scheduled news conferences are Wednesdays and then after the game. And so when we are led into the field house at the end of practice, yeah, he might be doing some stuff with the other quarterbacks, but this was specific extra time with Keon Coleman. They were running a few routes. We were talking, they were in some very, got to be careful with the word I use. I don't know. Heated's not they were in, like they were being very deliberate in terms of what they were working on. A couple of routes, a couple of things here or there. And you don't always see that. So I don't know if that's a clue that Keon Coleman is back and but it seems like he kind of has to. They cut Elijah Moore. Curtis Samuel goes on IR. And as you mentioned, Brandon Cooks, how much of the playbook does he know? Now, Sean McDermott did point out that because Cooks has played on a lot of teams, he's been traded 4 times, by the way, which ties Eric Dickerson for the NFL record of most times being traded. This wasn't a trade situation. He was released by the Saints and then picked up as a free agent by the Bills. But Brandon Cooks has bounced around enough that he knows things and hopefully can speak the language. Hopefully he can handle Joe Brady's vernacular and the play calls and symbols and signals and all these other things. But to be able to do it on a few days' notice is going to be difficult. And so, yeah, it's a patchwork receiving core more than usual. And it's been a patchwork receiving core kind of all year, and maybe never more so than right now heading into this game at Pittsburgh.
Well, the hope from the Bills' perspectives is that Brandon Cooks comes in and has an impact similar to Amari Cooper. And not necessarily the passes that he catches and the plays that he makes, but that having a veteran receiver that knows what he's doing and has the right skill set makes everybody else better. The right presence makes everybody else better. And I think that could happen. But in week 1 in this game against the Steelers, he's not coming into Amari Cooper's role. If Joshua Palmer plays, he kind of took over that receiver position. Keon Coleman's an outside receiver. Brandon Cooks, who is he replacing? Is he replacing Elijah Moore and Curtis Samuel, who haven't been playing much lately? Is he slotting in somewhere with Khalil Shakir? And then with the Bills playing 2 backup tackles, possibly a rookie at right tackle or a second-year player who didn't play at all last season at right tackle, and the protection issues that they had even with their starting right tackles, do they need to keep more tight ends and running backs in to help block? Do they need to play a style of offense that protects the quarterback and is focused on stopping the pass rush and the blitzers more than getting receivers open and doing things down the field? There's a strong narrative that the Bills are wasting Josh Allen's talent or not fulfilling their potential as a team simply because they don't have top-end wide receiver talent. And the Bills don't have top-end wide receiver talent and could stand to get better play from that position group. But there's a lot of reasons why the Bills have had struggles and lost games and aren't Super Bowl favorites anymore. It's not just that. And just having a talented receiver on the roster and in uniform and on the field for them Sunday isn't going to solve all the issues and might not solve any of the issues if they can't block and they can't get Josh Allen comfortable and able to throw those passes and see down the field better than he has recently.
Acrisure Stadium. I had to just look it up just now because not only can I not remember that it's no longer Heinz Field, but I need to know how to pronounce Acrisure. It doesn't exactly flow off the lips.
How about the turf condition? Is that going to be something they play?
Well, that's what I was just looking up. Okay. That's what I was just looking up, Jonah. So Pitt does play the Miami Hurricanes on Saturday. I don't know. I mean, it was last Sunday, the Western Pennsylvania Interscholastic Athletic League just had their championships. Last Saturday. I don't know what they have going. I'll look it up here maybe while we talk. I don't want to bog it down, but yes, this is a stadium with a grass field that has a history of this time of year starting to get pretty chunky and not that great. And I know that this is a big reason why Terry Pagula wants grass. He's very Pittsburgh oriented because of his businesses and his respect for the Steelers. And now the Bills Stadium will not have a college team also playing on it like the Steelers do. I mean, this is a major football program in a city, and I'm not sure what the agreements were in the funding, but the Steelers also like to host the high school games because it's let's face it, they're bigger in Western Pennsylvania than they are in Western New York. And the Steelers, I think, view that as giving back to the community, as the Bills have. But we talked about it just on 2 podcasts ago, how the Bills probably don't want the high school kids coming up and chewing up their field for this reason. So yeah, that's another thing that Josh Allen and the offensive line and the Steelers pass rush might have as an added variable to consider.
But the Bills do have one of the best, if not the best, rushing attacks in the NFL. And maybe this game script, this field conditions, and the Bills having these, issues with pass protection and passing the ball favors a team that runs the ball as well as the Bills do. Chase Lunt and Ryan Vandermark probably at this point in their career are more advanced run blockers than pass blockers, maybe, or the Bills can trust them more in those type of roles. So there might be a more run heavy attack, which could favor the Bills in this matchup. But there's a lot of Bills fans that don't want to see more running and more conservative offense. They want to see the Bills revive that passing attack, similar to what it was when Brian Daboll was the coordinator. I don't think that's happening this season, but there's a belief that that's what needs to happen if the Bills are going to get back into contention for the Super Bowl.
No high school football games tonight at Acrisure Stadium. So just Pitt versus Miami. And then Bill. Oh, by the way, speaking of Miami, I gave you that little bit of trivia about Miami of Ohio and Miami, Florida being the same tribe. I was wrong. I didn't recall. I remember learning that in my Ohio social studies in 7th grade. Specifically remember that. It was on the test. I mean, where else would I come up with that? But
who taught you that? Ron Harper?
Yes. That's a good one, and I can't come up with anything. The cradle of coaches, though, Miami of Ohio. Bo Schembechler, maybe he would have known something about it. So anyway, just those 2 games on the Acrisure Stadium grass. But this isn't a plug-and-play Bills offensive line. I mean, this is Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown. They're, 2 really good players. In fact, the Pro Bowl fan balloting started this week, I believe. And, it's not like baseball where every team has a position player listed. I think there are 5 or 6 guys that you can vote for the Bills. 2 of them are Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown. And they're not going to be out there. So yes, the rushing attack, like you say, it is good, and they're going to have to rely on James Cook. And the Steelers also not necessarily great at stopping the run. They are kind of soft in that regard, as good as their defense is in other ways. So that is the soft underbelly of the Steelers defense. However, is Ryan Vandemark, Alec Anderson, Tylen Grable, Chase Lunt, are they going to be able to get the job done? And if offensive line coach Aaron Kromer can incorporate those dudes into an offensive line that can be productive on Sunday, then I think you're looking at a very gritty and very impressive Bills win, even though I think the Bills are favored in this game. Do you know, Jonah? And
3
maybe things
points,
have
I
changed.
think I heard you say on somebody else's Bob Kaczynski's podcast earlier this week, and I haven't checked to see if it's moved. While you're looking that up, I will say Tylen Grable looked very good in training camp. Spencer Brown missed a lot of the early practices in training camp, kind of nursing that back injury, and Tylen Grable had that spot and looked pretty good. And I think there's reason to believe he could develop into a good right tackle for the Bills. But in his first game, having missed all of this time and really just gotten back on the practice field somewhat recently, that's a lot to ask. And even if he's a good player who plays well, I think you got to expect some rookie mistakes in this first game, and those could be very costly to the Bills.
Bills have been bet down slightly. They are a 3-point favorite. You can get them at you can get the Steelers plus 3.5 at a couple places, but they're mostly giving the Steelers 3 points in most sports books.
I think the key for the Bills is to take advantage of having these extra days to prepare, and also maybe getting Brandon Cooks in and bringing something to the game plan, especially in those early scripted plays that Pittsburgh's not expecting. Something they haven't seen on film before, or
Right.
not this situations, the down in the distance, doing something a little bit different. Because that seems to be the Bills' biggest problem lately, is that an offense that was working very, very well for over a season, for over 2 seasons, has stopped working. And I don't know if it's necessarily the pieces. It seems to be the pieces, how they're being used at time and situations, and that needs to be shuffled up and less predictable than it's been.
Yeah, and that is critical. You raise a great point, Jonah. The extra time, and they knew ahead of time that, well, Spencer Brown, I'm sure that they had a pretty good idea he was going to be out this week. Deion Dawkins, a little bit more uncertainty because it's a concussion protocol, and whether or not he clears the certain hurdles, the certain markers that you need to hit. They would have probably had a decent idea behind the scenes and to make preparations for such, as opposed to losing one of these guys during the game, trying to make corrections on the fly. They can remedy this in very specific ways to the strengths of these replacements, or cover up the weaknesses. We can maybe also see some things like extra protection, extra tight end, Reggie Gilliamore, chipping, all these different things that we didn't see against Houston, in which Joe Brady and Aaron Kromer pretty much just let Josh Allen be the sixth offensive lineman, and that is reminiscent of what you get, with, speaking of the Steelers and Heinz Field, Ben Roethlisberger, and it was almost like coaching malpractice, in which he just was under siege all the time. But it was like, hey, Ben, you got to make that first guy miss. Sorry, dude, but we need to get more receivers out in running patterns, and guys doing other things, and that's part of the strategy that really really crushed the Bills down in Houston a week and a half ago. It was leaving Josh Allen naked to essentially say, Josh, you're a really good athlete, and we need help in other places. We need to dedicate personnel to doing other things in our offense. Just got to make the first dude miss and live, try to survive back there. And that did not work. And it's worked before because he's a great athlete, but certainly didn't a week and a half ago.
How they've won a lot of games, or he's had a lot of big plays over the years. That 4th down touchdown run against the Chiefs last year was, those mesh routes that everybody's very critical of right now, occupying all of the Chiefs coverage guys and making it a one-on-one play really between Josh Allen and the spy linebacker, and Josh Allen beats him to the spot, or in other cases he's stiff-arming or hurdling, getting Josh Allen one-on-one with a linebacker that he can beat on the run, or Josh Allen on the run and making a scramble pass to wide receivers, breaking off their routes, has been the money play for the Bills over the years. And now they seem more vulnerable in those type of situations.
Anything more on the Bills before we flip over and talk some Sabres, Jonah?
No, I think we've got into a very big game. It'll be very interesting to see what the reaction is. Well, I don't think we have to guess, but it'll be a notable week of reaction if the Bills lose this game. And then if they win, I think they're in a pretty good spot. And one of the telling things I think that's happened this weekend with the losses by the Chiefs and the Ravens, the Bengals won, but they don't have a very good record, is that all these teams that came into the year with, we thought, the best quarterbacks in the NFL are struggling in various ways. Some of them are quarterback struggling. Some of them are the rest of the team struggling or losing in spite of good quarterback play. So the Bills, this seems like a very fraught situation here in Buffalo, and in some ways it is, but it's not dissimilar to what's going on in Baltimore, Kansas City, Cincinnati over the past couple of seasons. And there's less examples. I mean, the Rams are playing very well, but teams with the best quarterbacks aren't necessarily the best teams in football right now. But when they get to the playoffs or the end of the season, maybe that'll flip back in favor of the Josh Allens and Patrick Mahomes and those type teams.
Through the Thanksgiving games, the Athletics NFL playoff simulator has the Bills at a 92% chance to make the playoffs because everything did get muddled down that much more. So the Bills' playoff chances went up quite a bit with everything that happened on Thursday. Their chances to win the division are at 9%. But their chances to make the playoffs, if they were to lose to the Steelers, would go from 92. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's if they beat the Steelers. I had that toggled. I'm sorry. It's 82%. I'm sorry. That's about the same as they went into the Thanksgiving game. So 82%, it would go up to 91 if they beat the Steelers. If they lose to the Steelers, it would go down to 68%. Then after that, it's the Bengals with Joe Burrow, who's back. They look pretty good on Thursday against the Ravens. Joe Burrow looked like he didn't miss any time. Then the Patriots, Browns, Eagles, Jets. That's the Bills' remaining schedule. Then speaking of upcoming schedules, the Sabres are in for a slog here. They go to Minnesota tomorrow for an 8:00 game. Then they're home against Winnipeg, and then they're on the road for 6 straight. In fact, they are on the road 11 of their next 14 games through January 8th. That's a long, bleak slog. All of those games are going to be on the road, 11 out of 14. Then they come home for 5 in a row, which is nice. And then they're on the road for 5 more in a row. And in fact, the second half of oh, geez, this is terrible again. I know we talked about this last week, but I can't. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. After they come back and have those 5 in a row, they play 10 of the next 13 on the road. Christ. And that takes you through February. I mean, again.
And they have the worst road record in the league.
Yeah. I mean, this is a team that maybe even talking about, oh, it's a shame they're going to have to go on the road, or looking at, they just lost 5-0 at home. So does it really matter that we're pitying them for losing that, the last line change, being able to send your guys over the board second hasn't exactly helped the Sabres with whatever home ice advantage. And you were there. How loud were the fire Kevin and sell the team chants? I did see some. I could hear them a little bit.
Yes, so they were
through
a little
the television
bit louder because as they've been popping up before, I think it's been a few weeks since we've heard that here. But as they cropped up late last season and into early parts of this season, they were coming from a very specific corner of the arena that's right where we sit over in the home side of the press box. And you can hear it very loudly, and it's where Kevin Adams can hear it because he's right next to where we sit. So it was very prominent for us in the press box. But I don't think it was ringing out throughout the whole arena at any point. Maybe that Palm Trees game probably had the most booing and vitriol towards Kevin Adams. He's also been booed when introduced before the season last year. But there was never a point where the whole arena was chanting "Fire Kevin Adams" and that the few people yelling it from one corner were getting other fans to pick up on it. It picked up a little more tonight. I heard it from across the arena, and it wasn't the whole fan base. Now, they announced a sellout tonight, and I think there were thousands of empty seats, but there was a pretty big crowd. By the end, it was half full. There weren't very many Sabres fans here, and the ones that were here seemed to say specifically to voice their displeasure, to boo the team as the game ended. And there were a couple chants for firing Kevin Adams, and there were a couple sell the team cries, and that's not good. And, the Sabres had maybe pushed away from that. They'd been playing well at home in most of their games. They've also had some of their worst performances of the season at home. They've been shut out at home 3 times now. The last time was against St. Louis, one of the worst teams in the league. But, the Sabres didn't play their worst game tonight. They, had a lot of shots on goal. They seemed to get a lot of energy from Tage Thompson fighting Stefan Noesen early on, and, seemed to be playing hard and playing gritty hockey and doing the right things to get scoring opportunities, but they got goalied, and they're no longer getting good goaltending. And the score got away from them and got even further away from it as they pressed and tried to get back into it late. I don't think they are the worst team in hockey, but their results are putting them right down there with the worst teams in the league, and they are last place in the Eastern Conference.
The 3 goalie situation, I'm not saying that played a part, but it probably hasn't helped Alex Lyon. He hasn't won a game in a month because he's not playing all the time, and then he's lost however many in a row when he is making his appearances. I know Lindy Ruff was asked about it in his post-game news conference today, and was kind of saying that they're handcuffed because they needed the help. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen was hurt to start the season. They needed some insurance, and now here they are with 3 goalies. Jonah, if they had to cut somebody, let's say they have to just all right, at some point we need, for the sake of our sanity and for our organization, we need to have our 2 guys and Devin Levi ready to go as our 3rd goalie in Rochester. Who are the 2 goalies?
Well, if you have to make that move, I think contractually you might have to waive Colton Ellis, who's a player you claimed off waivers. Alex Lyon seems like maybe the odd man out because he has the least upside of the 3 goaltenders, and based on today's result, a bad performance, and the Sabres got through the past 20 days with Luukkonen and Colton Ellis as the goaltender.
But hasn't Alex Lyon given them their best goal when they have gotten good goaltending? It's been Alex Lyon.
Yes, but that was earlier in the season, and this wasn't his first bad start. He'd been trending down a little bit before that. But I don't think that's what the Sabres are going to do. I think the Sabres have him under contract for this year and next year as a reliable veteran backup goaltender who can, be the number 1 goaltender if they need him to be, like earlier in the season. I don't think the Sabres are going to waive either of these goaltenders. I think they're hopeful that maybe a trade materializes, or
I asked that kind of as an exercise just to whittle down
Well, they might need the roster spot at some point, and it's not ideal for any of the goaltenders. So even if they don't make a roster move to rectify this 3 goalie rotation, I think they need to figure out a 2 goalie rotation and keep one of them on ice, whether it's discovering an injury that allows them to do that, or just deciding who's their number 1 goalie, who's their number 2, and who's their number 3, and having that number 3 not play very much, because it doesn't seem like the 3 goalie rotation. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen's playing better now, but does not seem happy with the way his career is developed here. I think he would be happy if he was the number 1 goalie and playing every night again. So the Sabres, they know, I trust that in this regard, they know their locker room and they know their players. And I think that if they have to make the decision on how to evaluate these 3 goaltenders, they probably will pick the right 2. But why am I giving them that benefit of the doubt? What have they really done to deserve that?
I found it interesting when Lindy Ruff answered that question. He conceded that this has been tough on the 3 goalies, but then he added himself. He said, it's been tough on me too. It was kind of like he would rather not have these 3 goalies. And it's tough to juggle and keep everybody happy and fresh. And he's had to do it. And I wrote a story about it heading into last season, in which I reached out to Mika Norinen back when he was the odd man out, when they had Ryan Miller, Marty Baron, and Mika Norinen, and they had all these assets and didn't know. Now that's a much different situation. Those were three really good goaltenders, and I'm including Norinen in that because he was a two-time Hockey News minor league player of the year, which I think he might have been the first goalie or something like that. Maybe the first back-to-back or anyways, but he was a hell of a prospect, and he kind of rotted because the Sabres didn't know what to do with him. He was under contract. They were asking too much in a trade, so they just held on to him, and he just sat there and got dressed in the Bandits locker room, I think, because there wasn't enough room for three goalie stalls in that locker room. And it's a bad situation for, as Lindy Ruff said, but not just for them, for him too. He was saying, hey, I wish I didn't have to do it.
And there's also Devin Levi, who's really the odd man out. He doesn't get any opportunity for a spot start if there's injuries because there's already three goalies on the roster, and he's probably frustrated with not being in the NHL yet and doesn't even have an opportunity to come up for a game or two to prove himself or even
Great
practice with the team. And then what happens in a month or two when the Sabres really are out of playoff contention and it becomes all about development for young players and looking ahead to the future? I don't think the Sabres have a clear understanding of their long-term pecking order with these goaltenders. Maybe they do, but it's hard to decipher what that is. And how do they, after the trade deadline, they can carry more players on the roster. They could even have four goaltenders up here if they really wanted to. But how do they decide who should be getting the starts and who should be getting the playing time? Might be a difficult situation coming up later on.
Jonah, anything? I mean, we mentioned UB football. I don't really know what more we need to say. They've lost three straight. They've kind of played their way out of much of the relevancy that has been yinning and yanging, yo-yoing. I guess if I want to go with my double Y's, my alliteration, it's probably more yo-yoing than yinning and yanging. But anything
I would
more to
just
say
say this
them?
about UB. Last year they were 9-4. This year they were 5-7. I don't think they were that much worse of a team. They did, not play as well in certain situations against some of the same teams. Even some of their wins weren't as impressive as their wins last year. But overall, yards per game, things like that, they weren't that much different. Quarterback play wasn't that much different, but didn't have as good of results. Didn't take advantage of bringing back 10 starters on defense and 4 of the 5 offensive linemen and their top running backs and some of their top receivers. The way the schedule lined up, 7 home games and some easier non-conference games than they often play in the past, it looked like I thought they could be worse than they were and maybe get to 6 or 7 wins. And so the fact that they had a losing record with all of that context built into it makes it disappointing. Just being 5-7, coming off a 9-4 season, so that's 14-11 in 2 years under Pete Lembo, I think is pretty good. But disappointing because they had an opportunity to just make this a slightly more successful season and continue it on into the bowl season. And if they were a little bit better, they played 7 games that came down to the last minute. I think they were 4-3 in those games, but lost those 3 when they were right there and had a chance to win.
Got off to such a good start. I think that was the biggest surprise, was how they, jumped out and did some things. Anything more to say, Jonah, about UB basketball? I mean, we've been talking about it. They haven't played for a little bit. I know that, you already mentioned you set up the game at Canisius tomorrow night, but have we learned more at those 2 games against, what was it? VMI and Bucknell. What have we learned about them?
More. I think it's more of the same, which is positive. I mean, they're 7-0. They're scoring the ball very well, shooting the ball very well. I think they're top 50 in the country in 3-point field goal percentage. Daniel
excellent
Freitag,
free throw shooting team too.
Yeah. Oh, and they're getting to the free throw line a lot. And this has a lot to do with Daniel Freitag. I think he had, 14 free throw attempts or something like that in one of these wins. He's an excellent player, transfer from Wisconsin, who was a highly recruited player out of Minnesota and just a gifted, natural offensive player. And he's scoring 20 a game, and him being on the floor seems to be helping some other players. They also got a guard, Angelo Brizzi, who started at Villanova, transferred to a couple mid-majors, Davidson, Longwood, I think are the 2. And he's their second leading scorer, and he's a good player. So they have some new players that have made their roster better and a couple returning players. But their strength of schedule, I think, is 300th in the country right now. So they haven't beaten anybody very good yet. Canisius will not raise that strength of schedule or be considered a very good win. So good scheduling. And I think there's a lot to be hopeful for, that they're going to have a good season, but I don't know if we can say for sure that they're MAC contenders and going to continue this run when the competition gets a little bit stiffer coming up.
What about St. Bonaventure? I haven't really heard much about them. I haven't gone out of my way to learn. That's obviously the best team in Western New York on a year-to-year basis. How are they starting out?
6-1, and their only loss is against North Carolina, number 16 in the country. Although Carolina might drop, they lost last night, but they're good. I think Bonner is very good. They play UB next Saturday. That'll actually be a game where we'll learn a lot more about UB, I think. And
where is that game?
That game's at UB.
All right.
So that'll be, an exciting local college basketball matchup to get to. Damon basketball, they're still undefeated, number 3 in the country, rolling along. High school basketball tips off next week. Got 3 games at Damon College on Wednesday night, supporting Coaches vs. Cancer. If you're ready to see some high school basketball players, that gets started next week.
All right. Well, Jonah, that's a hell of a show. I think we're nice and tidy. We hit all the bases. Anything else you want to add that I didn't?
Yeah, I want to ask you. You got a prediction on the Bandits, 4-peat or no?
I'm going to say yes. I mean, I'm a big proponent of status quo. I'm ready for the rest of the National Lacrosse League to prove me wrong. Prove the Bandits wrong.
4-peats are rare. 3-peats are rare, but 4-peats are very, very rare in all the sports.
A little bit of a spoiler. Tune in to Bills Kickoff Live on CW23 and Channel 4 starting at 11 a.m. on Sunday, and you will see me pick the Bills to lose in Pittsburgh. So I have the Steelers winning this one outright. And it all comes down to everything we were talking about earlier. I originally picked the Bills to win when I made my prediction earlier in the week, but no Dawkins, no Brown. I think that they would have been okay without Brown. But you take Deion Dawkins out of it, I think Josh Allen, I think, is gonna have to be a warrior in this game.
And no Terrell Bernard. Now the offense takes more blame for this loss in Houston, but the defense wasn't great either, and they've taken a lot of injuries, and the defense is not championship caliber, maybe not even playoff caliber right now. I think it can get there, but needs healthier players and needs to play better. Special teams hasn't been great. I mean, the Bills are just not.
Well, they scored a touchdown in Houston, but that also shows, they had the kickoff return touchdown, which a lot of people are leaving out of the discussion when they're talking about how bad the Bills offense has been. They scored only 12 points. One of those touchdowns would belong to the special team.
Well, and the Bills offense has had bad games and cost them some wins. But they're still ranked 3 or 4, depending on the stat you're looking at in the league, yards per play, yards per drive, anything like that. It's not the major weakness on this team. In fact, it's the strength of the team. So I think that's concerning that the Bills, if it was only the offense and you said, hey, get this in gear, the defense, the special teams, everything else is here to go, the health of the team. But there's a lot of leaks in the boat for the Bills right now. Now, let me ask you this. So because I think the Bills are going to win this week. You think, if you're predicting them to lose, do you predict a scenario where they do make the playoffs after losing this game? Because I think if they lose this game, it's really tough with these tiebreaks.
Yeah, again, I'm leaning in on the playoff predictor. The playoff predictor doesn't factor in that Joe Burrow is back. It has Cincinnati being whatever the Cincinnati and the metrics and the stats that the Cincinnati has accumulated to this point. So Joe Burrow coming back, then they're at New England, at Cleveland. Now, that's an interesting game. Shedeur Sanders is playing. I'm not a fan of his. I don't think that he's any kind of revelation. He provided a spark for the Browns last week. Will that still be in effect on December 21st? I'm going to say probably not. But Cleveland's defense is legit, and that's the thing that is a concern. And then the Bills have a host Philadelphia, and then that game against the Jets, which could be the final home game in the Ralph. And the Bills might need that one to make the playoffs. So I still think that the Bills make the playoffs, but I think that the circumstances and the matchup and the injuries don't align. Bad weather game, perhaps. I don't know who that favors really when you're talking about all these different, these are two This is real football, real, hard, tough weather on maybe a rough track, and teams that are going to try to pound it at each other. A lot of bumps and bruises, all that shit.
Sounds like a great NFL Films highlight package to watch on
Right?
HBO on Tuesday night, or I don't know if they still do that show, but
I don't know either because it's bounced around to different networks. I think it might be on CW.
I think it's on CW, and I probably should know
might
that.
be
Maybe promote that
on UPN or some shit. Jonah, thank you for this. And thank you to everybody out there for watching and listening. Please subscribe, like, rate, comment, all those things. We really appreciate everything that you've done. I guess in the spirit of Thanksgiving, thank you to everyone who subscribe and the loyal viewers and listeners. It does mean quite a bit to us, and also to our sponsor, CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. Thank you for being with us all this while, all these years, as we head towards the end of 2025. And we'll talk to you next week here on Tim Graham and Friends.
The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions.